Hi, everybody. Okay, I can see people are coming in. While the last people are joining, let's just highlight that in this webinar, there should be a tab called chat. And in there, there's a public chat. And during this webinar, feel free to just pop in any questions you might have, and we'll try to answer them as we go. And with that said, let me start by sharing the screen. There we are. Welcome to this Perfion update for Q3 2025. We're going to talk a little about this release we have coming out the door. Hopefully today, if not then tomorrow, it's the Perfion 5.7. Those of you who are veterans with Perfion would know that we normally just do 2 releases a year, one in the spring, one in the fall, then a number of minor releases in between. But this year we're doing a bit differently. Yes, in the first release this year, we really wanted to have notifications part of the release. We missed that, so that's why we're doing a very small release here for this summer. But before we could dive into it, my name is Jeppe Hatting. I'm the product manager of Perfion. With me today, I got Stephen Rado, our advisor and pre-sales consultant, and he's going to do some demo of this notifications we have. We have a somewhat short agenda today. I'm going to go through the release. The big headline is the notifications and the comments, but we do have a number of minor things also we want to highlight for this release. Then Stephen is going to do a short demo of the notification framework, and then we're going to take a look at what's coming for the next of the release. I got a little preview of what's coming up. The release update, yes, this is Perfion 2025 R2. The next release is going to be R3, which is a little special for Perfion. This would be 5.7, and the next one 5.8. And if you look at the headlines, it looks something like this. The big headlines, of course, the comments and notifications, and we'll dive more into that in a minute. Then we can split the data and UI languages in the Windows client, just like we've been able to do for some time in the web client. And then you have a lot of functionality actually to the new import. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but last release, actually 1 year ago, Perfion came with a new importer, first in Actions, then the import wizard in the web client. And this new importer has a bunch of benefits compared to the old one. For one, it's much faster when working with a lot of data, and we are adding some more support, some more functionality to this importer as we trudge along. We have some cool things in here where you can now do imports remotely from other services in Perfion. We've got some cool smart hierarchy matching, which I'm going to dive a little into. And then you can now use the new import also in the Windows client and not just in the web client. Comments and notification, I'm not going to talk too much of that as Steven's going to demo that in a second, but the big headline is that now you can add comments to products. You can do that to any selectable items in Perfion. Have some simple formatting, you can do some simple bullet points and list, and you can tag other users in it. The reason we've done this as something separate than feature data, previously you could always create a feature, just name it comment, and then type whatever you want to this one, but we want to do a setup that allows us to expand upon the functionality in the future, and it's not solely tied into the feature data, but it's actually its own entity where we can do and add the functionality that we want right now and in the future. With this tagging, with the comments, you can do this both directly from the grid, right-click any item and say add comment, or you can do it from the item editor. Just open the item, and at the very top, you'll have the comment section. When you tag other users, the user will get a little notification in the bottom right corner, say, hey, you've been tagged in a comment. They can click open this and then open the new notification center in the top right. And here we're able to see all of the comments you've been tagged in and mark them as read and actually open the items you've been tagged on directly from there. So it gives the users a good entry point when you want to pull attention to specific items for specific users to make sure they actually see that item. They do get notifications for that. Moving on, in the web client for some time, it's been possible to keep a separate between the data language and the UI language. This can be very useful if you are a translation manager. Maybe you're in charge of managing the German or Spanish translations, but your company language is English. Or maybe you just prefer to use the UI in English because that's what most software uses often. So we can now actually split it up. So whatever matches you, what you want, this is what you can actually do. So you can have one language for the UI. You can see that in the top of the screenshot here. So the information groups, the filters, section types, etc. are all in English. But in the actual product data, you'll have the German translations. Very, very neat. Then we added the new importer to the Windows GUI. Previously, you wanted to use the new import. The only options were using actions, or you could use the new import wizard. But now you have the UI to use the new importer directly in the Windows client. We are not removing the old importer or the legacy importer, as we call it now. It's going to be there for quite some time. It's not going to be deprecated until we feel that the new importer is 100% ready to be deprecated. Yeah, so the new import, if you haven't played with it, please have a look at it. It's we do see some amazing performance boosting working this, especially working with very large data sets. If you do like big regular synchronization of data from an ERP system, Perfion, and there's a lot of data that's not changed, just a big data set, but only very few changes, the new importer is much faster. Another benefit of it is that it can now actually run in parallel. So you have multiple imports running at the same time. The new importer is going to handle that much better. Also with the new importer, this is probably something a lot of you have tried before. You have an hierarchy with some different categories and you want to import some new products. So you create your little Excel sheet with your value, your item name, and then a category. In this case, I've just written cups. And of course, what you want to do is you want to import it to the cups in the subsection here. But if you tried that with a new importer, what it would do was create a new cups in the root here, which was probably not what you wanted. With the new release, we added a little fix to the new importer where it can actually fix that. So if the new importer, you try to import to a hierarchy, but you only specify the name of the root item, the new importer will attempt to find it and match it with that one if it can. It does have a lot of requirements because there could be duplicate items and a lot of different stuff. So there is some requirements for this to be working. Mainly that we need this item, in this case, cups, it needs to be unique. If you have cups several places in the hierarchy, it will throw an error. If you have it in several places, but one of them is in the root, then this will be interpreted as this is probably in the root you want this item. But this should make a lot of imports much simpler, much easier to work with. Next one is a little more technical, but for the tech geeks out there, we can now say that you can now use the new importer remotely through our API. So if you're building a service against Perfion and you need to do bulk uploads of data, bulk uploads of products, then you can actually remotely upload an Excel file through our API. You can attach an asset file for that if you also have some images and some manuals and whatever you want to attach to these products, and then start the import remotely and then continue to check when this import has been running. So if you're doing this, these big bulk integrations up against Perfion, we now have some actually very good support for this. And of course, the documentation for this, along with the Postman collection, will be available on knowledge base, so you can download this and quickly get up and running if you're interested in that. That was like the highlights of this release. So I'm going to hand it over to Stephen if you want to do a little demo.
Thank you, Jeppe. So let me share my screen. Take over, share my entire screen. And then if you just let me know, Jeppe, when you can see that so I can proceed.
There it is.
Great. So let's look at this in two contexts. Let's look at comments and notifications, and we'll start with comments. And thank you very much for the question that came through from Sofian before, which is asking about whether comments were inheritable, and they're not. And what you do is you apply a comment to an individual item within the grid, and that can be any selectable, but it is, if it's set at a parent level, it is not inherited down to the children. In order to set a comment, you'll simply right click, and within the context menu you will now see an option for comments. So here we can see a comments history that has been applied to this particular item, and we can see who has made the comment and the date and time, and of course the actual context of the comment. And because I am the author of these comments, I'm logged in here as the administrator. I've got the option to edit or delete these comments at this stage, and I can add a new comment in here. So I can say new comment, click add. Now, that hasn't been surfaced or highlighted to anyone because I haven't actually tagged anyone within that particular comment. In order to tag somebody, you just simply hit the @ key. Very common to the likes of Microsoft Teams and Jira, if you're familiar with those systems. That is how you access the other team members in order to be able to tag them. So if I was to, as soon as I hit the tab, sorry, the @ button, the @ key, I'm presented with my list of users. Note that it is just users. Currently, we don't have the facility to be able to tag in a team. Potentially, that may come in the future if we understand that there's enough requirements for that. So if that's something that you feel would be beneficial, then let us know. We're willing to receive any feedback that you may have on this initial release and the way that we've applied the functionality for this for the launch of comments. So here's my list of users within the system, and I can just filter by typing in a J there, and then I can see I've got the option to tag in Jonas. So that means that now that he's been tagged, he will get an alert and a notification. So let me just close this down for a moment, because we'll come back to notifications in just a moment. So in order to review any existing comments, we will just right click and go to comments, and they'll be surfaced. Something that came up yesterday that we haven't got in this initial release, but I suspect we may consider for future releases, is we don't somehow tag the fact that there is a comment underlying on this particular item. So I imagine that's something that we'll revisit and consider for future releases and the roadmap. But for now, it's a matter of right-clicking, going to the context menu, and launching this comments pop-up. You can also see it on the item editor. So if I close this down and then launch the item, we will see, I think the issue here is part of my testing. Let me just try this again with a separate item. Cancel this. Okay. Close that down, start again.
That's the fun of doing live demos.
Ah, of course. Demo gremlins. Okay, so go back. So coffee machines, let's try this one over here. Open item. And then when the item editor launches, of course, it's now gathering data from various different external systems as well as from within Perfion. We'll see that underneath the top row of the product, and then before we get to the data that's been organized into the top view groups, we can see this comment section here that is by default collapsed in order to make the most of the screen space. And so you would need to expand that section if you wanted to take a look at the comments. There's just the one comment down here, and then we've got the ability to add or respond and tag. And the dialogue here and the way the interface, the way in which you add these comments is precisely the same as it is from the grid, as opposed to the item editor. And as you can see, you've got this rich text editor in order to be able to add in some emphasis via making certain phrases and words bold and in italics, and add in links and that sort of thing as well, or bullet lists as well, if that takes your fancy. So I can then collapse this down. Okay, so that is how you can add or review any comments that have been set already. Let's take a look at the notification system, and I'm sure that you will have seen by now the additional icon in the top right. Jeppe mentioned it in his opener, and right next to the clipboard, which is showing you the current status of any jobs that the application server is running. Just to the left of that, we've got that bell notification icon, which is currently showing that to me that there are 2 unread emails for the user that's logged into the system now. So when we click on that bell icon, and we've got the filters for the notifications at the top, and by default we're looking at all unread. And whilst this is showing today, I believe this is actually more specifically the last 24 hours. We can change these filters to look at all received within that time frame, and then expand that time frame to look over the last week, for example. And again, this is a combination of read and unread, as denoted by the envelope icon. And so here is the, and I can change this to all time, which tallies with the fact that previously we saw that there are 2 unread notifications for me to review. So I can just simply highlight those and then mark them as read. And then, of course, the number that relates to unread items will be updated on the notification icon. So if I change this back to look at all of the items so I can actually see them now that they are in the red status, let's take a bit of a closer look at the what you can do within here. Of course, you can see who set the comment initially and the date and time and when it was sent, but the only difference here from what we saw previously is that there is a link directly to the item editor for that particular item. We've just come from that section. We've seen where the collapsed new comment section is just above where you start to see the information within the top view groups, and that is where I can then directly respond. And if I was to get into a dialogue, I'd need to then tag the particular user that initially tagged me in this. Let's take a look at how that would work in practice. So if I can expand this comment, there we can see the comments that have previously been set. So I move this over here, and then in this window, I'm logged in as a separate user, so they have 6 unread notifications. None within the last 24 hours. So let's mark all those as read. And let's go through the process. Actually, let's do it on an image as opposed to a product. Okay, and I'll change this view, card layout. Okay, so Jonas, can you check this image for me, please? Are the dimensions correct? For example, add that comment and then close. And as Jeppe mentioned, there's a pop-up in the bottom right. And then, of course, the unread count in the notification center has incremented. So we've got that 1 icon over here, so that I can then see the link through to the image. So I can open that up. It opens up the item editor. I can do that to then respond. Open that comment section, tag in the administrator again. Yes, I have checked, all good. Scroll across to the add button. Here we go. And then cancel that down. And that will then be flagged over to the administrator because we've then tagged in the administrator. But I imagine that you're asking now, what if I'm not in Perfion on a regular basis? How will I be notified about any urgent comments that have been added to products? Well, we thought of that. We will also accompany these notifications, if it's been set up accordingly, with an email as well, which will be received. And in order to be able to receive the email, of course, you need to have the relevant email address that has been set against the user profile for that particular user. And Unfortunately, I don't have any examples of that right now, but we'll take a look at how that's set up. So we'll switch over to the Windows client just to see that. And if I go to the settings section, on this last tab over here, you'll see mail settings. And this tab here is used to set up the emails that are sent through for communications with the supply portal. And there's also a drop-down mail template for notifications. But we'll deal with these first two options initially. The authentication service URL, that's simply the address for your web client in order to be able to send links within the email to the item editor for the item that you're placing the comment on. So this would be the address of your web client. And the SMTP server, if I drop down, I've got two options here. These are all of the remote connections that have been labeled as email type connections. So we've got the two in that list there. So if I just momentarily switch to my remote connections, you can see I have a number of remote connections in this system, but only two of them are designated as email. So that's when you would go to add and you would specify the type. So that drop down list there is reading from the types of email. You set up your connection to the SMTP server and and you can test as well from that section. So settings, mail settings, and then we'll change this to notifications. You do it for multiple different languages as well. And you've got placeholders in here for who made the comment and the actual item name. Send a test email. And then here's effectively the template with the placeholders in for the link to the actual item that's mentioned. Of course, it doesn't have an item to use it within the context, but this accompanying mail, you can embellish this template, of course. You have the option to also use HTML within the email, as you can see, to implement your corporate colors and perhaps any images to make it like a sort of rich text format when that's emailed through for that notification. So that's all I wanted to show you today in terms of the setup, and we'd love to hear your feedback once you've had a chance to utilize this in the real world.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. I think it looks very nice. It's a somewhat simple implementation. There's not a whole lot to it. Doesn't require any real configuration or configuration of the backend side. Just as soon as you upgrade Perfion, this notifications work will be available to you. Of course, if you want to also enable the emails templates, then there is or the email notification. Then there's a little work because you need to have an SMTP server set up that can actually handle this. But besides that, as soon as this you're on the new version of Perfion, you'll be able to use this. We got just a question in the chat if the explanation of the setup and templates will be shared in knowledge base. Yes, it will. There should already be documentation how to work with these email templates in general, but up until now that has mostly been related for the supplier portal, but it will get its own section for managing these email templates. So that will be on the knowledge base. Okay, moving on, I want to talk a little about what's coming in the next release. So this one was fairly small, but the next release we have is going to be very interesting, I think. The big headline for the next release is AI. We've been working for some time by including AI in Perfion. AI is a big topic still. It really became all the rage last year and the year before that. And we've been a little slow to actually implement any AI functionality in Perfion. But for the next release, we're coming with a solid package of what we believe will be very valuable AI functionality so we can work with these modern large language models directly in Perfion, not just through actions. We will also make it easier to work with them through actions, but we will have some dedicated AI functionality within Perfion. I'm going to show a little screenshot and a little demo of that, what's coming for the next release in a minute. Besides that, we're working on what we call the web catch-up. So we want to continue to lift functionality, especially some of the heavier admin functionality from the Windows client, so it's also available in the web client. And we are building, adding hopefully a big chunk of that for the next release. Another one, and I'm going to show a little more about this, that Perfion is going to get a new look and feel to match with the rest of the Boyum products. We're going to add some more functionality to the import wizard. I'm going to show that in a minute, but if you're not played with the import wizard yet, I strongly suggest you to have a look at it. It's very, very powerful. Then we're getting support for Portuguese in the UI, because that's been a big demand for some of our clients. We're doing some minor improvements to actions, make sure you're a little easier to interact with, make sure it's a bit easier to query data when you have a lot of product information you need to enrich, make sure you have better options in the Windows client to actually get some output out of actions and some better support for variables throughout. And then for the new import, we're also adding support for staging. So if you're using staging in Perfion, then the new importer will support that from the next release. Now, onto a little preview of some of the things we are working on with Perfion and AI. All of the screens here, they are mostly, mock-ups, and we are taking this. This is all in development, so the final design of this might be a difference, but this is what we are focusing on right now. The first use case we have is it's a very classic use case when working with these language model. It's just like when you work with ChatGPT for doing something. You write a prompt, you get a response back. But we want to improve that with some of the functionality we already have in Perfion. So what we're working on is what we call a prompt-based value generation. The idea is that it should be very powerful for generating titles and descriptions and simple text that you are usually can do very easy with a large language model. We're going to spice that up with having this based on the formula editor, if you're familiar with that one. So you right click on an item in Perfion, you say generate with AI, and then you get a little formula editor where you can add in which features do we want to use. So you can say, this AI, right, create a friendly consumer focused marketing text, including this list of feature or the value of those feature. Click generate, get the response, modify it, and save it. So again, it's quite simple, but going to be able to interact with these large language models directly in Perfion. Our step 2 for that is that these templates should be saved, so you can actually reuse them or use them en masse across of many different products. So you can really speed up this generation of content. So the idea is that if you have no content, then there's no reason not to use this, because you will always have something to work on and something to improve on. Next work is sort of the same thing, but a little more expanded upon. We see the need for, whereas the one before that's very much focused on one field at a time, we want to make sure that Perfion has some way to expand on this and enrich your product data en masse using these large language model. Uh, Something we know a lot of our customers struggle with is that they already got some information, but they would like to be able to track more information out of what we already have. If you already have some descriptions, if you already have some images and some user guides for products, well, these language models, they can already extract more information from that, and we want to support that in Perfion. So if you have products in Perfion, we want to be able to allow you to say, hey, AI, given this image, given this description, given this user guide, pull out some additional information for that and fill out the color, the material, put in a category both internally, put in a category for a website. We want to build a framework for working with this within Perfion, and to make sure that it can also scalable. So these templates, you should be able to save them. You should be able to use them through actions and triggers. This is the directions we're going. What the final design might look like is still up to debate, but this is something we want to provide within Perfion, because we see that as a core use case in this section between product information management and working with large language models. Another one that's more again for the technical client is we want to have some dedicated command for you to work with these models directly in actions. If you want to build these models, to work with these models today in actions, you have to do some fairly complicated scripting. We have a command for interacting with API, but that requires a lot of deep knowledge for APIs to work with that. We want to be able to pull that up a level and make it a little more easy to work with. So we want to have a dedicated command for these large language models where some of these can write, hey, give me a text, this is my prompt based on this feature data you're already working on in action, get the result, and then import back into Perfion. So we want to make it more approachable to build these potentially very complicated, very powerful actions. We want to make that more approachable for people who are not programmers. The next one, and I can actually show you a little demo of that one, is that we're working on doing some AI system mapping in the import wizard, because we know with the import wizard as it is today, if you have a very, very large data set, it can take some time to pick that through, and there's not a lot of reason for that. For a lot of that should be very, very easy to match with the data you have in Perfion. The import wizard already does something. So if a feature in your import file is exactly what the feature is in Perfion, then it'll already work. But we can expand it a little bit then with a little use of AI. And I actually want to show a short demo of that, if I can share the correct screen. Share this one here. So in Perfion, in the web client, if you're not on the newest version of Perfion, then you might be surprised to see this, but we have a new function up here called the import wizard. The import wizard is a new powerful tool to interact with a new importer through the web client. What it can do that the old importer cannot do is that it can import any Excel file directly into Perfion without you having to rename and match the Excel file to what you have in Perfion. You can just take your export file directly as this and then start matching it with Perfion. How it works is that you select your data file. In this case, I got an Excel sheet here called export. We can have a look at it in here to see what it actually contains. It contains some product information, some item names, an EN code, brand, and etc. and etc. It's quite a long file, and we will notice that it's using from Perfion the captions. So this power brackets that's not a feature in Perfion. If you use the old importer directly on this Excel file here, that would throw an error. It would not be able to do this. But with the import wizard, when this is uploaded, I can tell where is my data, where's my header row, what do I want to import it to. Let's say product, and I click next. And here we have the power of the import wizard is. Here you'll be able to match what you have in the Excel file. You can match it to what you want to import it to in Perfion. In this case, it would be the item name in English. But if you have a very, very large file here, this job could take some while, but we can speed this up. Now I got a little button here, that's a work in progress. It's probably going to look a little different when it comes out in this fall. But when I click this one, what actually happens behind the scene is that we send this entire Excel file to the ChatGPT and get the response back. And it's still a work in progress. It doesn't perfectly match anything, but it can actually speed up the process quite a bit. And we are continually tweaking. So hopefully it will be able to do everything. Otherwise, you can see it still did much of the work for me. What's going to be very cool for the next release also with this, that you'll get the chance to save all of this. So if you have the same Excel file, you need to import that, several times a week, something like that. Then we're giving the option to able to saving this configuration here, saving this mapping, so you don't have to redo it every time. Oops, and they tell me there is something wrong. Yeah, so Nearpod also gives some better error messages before you run, so you can see what's actually wrong. What is in capacity? Okay, this is a demo branch, so there's probably some things that's not work. That's fine for now. I wanted to show you the AI mapping. Great. And I said, as it is now, it's going to speed up the process of mapping your existing files to the Perfion much faster. And when you also be able to save and reuse these mappings, we can save you quite some time building this. Actually, quite powerful. Where previously you have to build some somewhat complicated action to actually do this. You can do this as a normal user directly in the UI now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of questions come in around the same theme, and it's to do with linking up to the AI API and how that's going to be done. Is that going to be integrated and then part of the Perfion offering, or are we going to expect you to sort of supply your own API key in order to use these features?
Yeah. What we decided to do is that people will need to provide their own AI key. For now, in the first release, what we will do is we will support OpenAI because that is by far the most, commonly used, most popular language model there is. So you will need to generate your own API key from ChatGPT, as the front end of it's called, but it's called OpenAI, the company. Sign up there, generate a key, and then it will use that one. They'll also make sure that all of the billing, because the tokens you use for generating this stuff will be billed to that account. So that will be handled outside of Perfion. We will provide you an interface where you can provide this key to actually use it. It's going to be OpenAI for now. We might open up to other services depending where we see the demand is, but AI is, as it is right now, the most popular one. So that's what we're going to support in the first draft of this.
So that's how we've set up the existing AI integration in our demo account, and I can tell you that the bills that have come in have been in the region of single-digit dollar values per month. Very, very low amounts in terms of, and considering that's the same account that's used across all of the consultants for multiple demos. So we use it quite heavily, and it's not very expensive at all.
Exactly. As long as you're working with, simple stuff, that's only text-based, it is quite cheap. When we opened up for this, where you could actually extract additional data based on images and files, it could be a little more expensive. It's still not extremely expensive, but it's something we will keep an eye on and should be kept an eye on.
Yeah.
That was everything for the AI part. This is going to come like in the first draft of it. We are continuing to monitor what's moving in the PIM world relating to AI. And if you have any question, anything that'd be very, very cool if Perfion could do this with AI, please reach out to us. We are always open for suggestions. The last part I want to mention for today is that Perfion is going to get a new look and feel. The details of that, how that exactly is going to look, is still a little unclear. That's a work in progress. But I want to tell you about that this is going to happen. I want to tell you about why it's happening. As you know, Perfion was acquired by Boyum a couple of years ago. Boyum, they have their own company style, they have their own way of communicating with its users, and of course, Perfion needs to match that at some point. We are keeping all functionality exactly what it is. We are not cutting anything, we're not moving anything. We are simply going to check how it looks and most likely where some of the buttons are placed somehow. There are a lot of benefits for this, both internally, but there's also going to be something for you guys as users of Perfion in the short term, but also in the long term. In the short term, it does allow us to clean the UI a bit. Those who are familiar with Perfion know that we are not always that great at keeping at existing view of how the UI looks. Sometimes a button is placed down here, sometimes it's green, sometimes it's white, sometimes they switch around, and the language used is not always clean. This does give us a chance to clean up a lot of these minor inconsistencies in the UI and make Perfion feel a little cleaner, a little more recognizable, and make sure that no matter where you go in Perfion, it feels like the same product. The long-term benefit I'm more excited about is does allow us, because this is a new code base we have based this on, we gain more control of what we will do with the UI. So if we at some point want to add light mode to Perfion, a dark mode, then or maybe so to allow for some customer branding. If you're familiar with the content store, you know that you can change some of the look and feel with that one. This new framework allows us some options in that direction if that's what we want to pursue. And again, the new framework we're building on, it's built by some very talented designers who also keep user experience as a focus. And that means that they're very focused on keeping a consistent language in the UI, but also making sure that keyboard navigation in the UI, that's just native to how they built these components. So we are going to have a good, consistent, full keyboard navigation, which is really going to help some of our export users out there. Yeah. Besides that, we have a bunch of other stuff. That was all what we have inside of Perfion. The next part here is a bit more niche, but we do, as you know, we launched a content store earlier this year. It's currently in version 5.1, and we have a 1.0 it's currently at, and we're releasing a 1.1. hopefully at the beginning of August, but it's mostly going to minor bug fixes, improvements, and user experience we want to improve on there. Later this year, we're working on a content store 1.2, which is also going to include a concept of creating collections that you can specifically share with some users or some organization. And it's going to include some more options for actually downloading and accessing this. Because right now, the only way of downloading it is through a zip file. We are going to open this a little more up, and then we're going to get some also better support for video player content. If you haven't seen the content store, or if you're interested in knowing about it, please reach out to either your Perfion sales guy or to your partner, and I'm sure they'll be happy to show you about it. I think it's a really cool product. The supply portal is also getting a little attention. We know some of our users, they have a demand that sometimes they want to be able to lock an item down. So when they have agreed with the supplier that this is how the product looks, then they lock it down in Perfion, and the supplier will no longer be able to update the product. We're also adding some options for you to be able to automate the user management. So you have a big dynamic system with a lot of suppliers going in and out. We're giving the options to actually automate that process. Then our e-commerce connectors is getting a little attention. For Shopify, we're adding some better support for prices. Among that, Shopify market prices, some better error handling, and then we're adding go live date for categories. In Shopify, you can say that this category should go live in December this year, and we're adding support for this through our connector. The main connector is also getting a little quality of life update with some better error handling, support for the newest version of Magento/Adobe Commerce, and support for digital decimal values. And finally, they released 2 modules for SAP Business One is going to get a little attention. The next version, which just came out, is going to be a little more robust, less errors thrown, and also going to support conversion of values. And later this year, we're also adding the option to delete values in the import. And that was pretty much this for this update. It was a little shorter than usual because this is a small release, but I think we have some very cool stuff in the pipeline here. Do you have any questions, Stephen?
No, I believe they're all responded to. There's no outstanding questions. I just wanted to say thank you all for taking some time out your day to attend.
Yes, thank you very much. I know it's hot out there. I know a lot of you guys are based in Europe where it's too many places above 30 degrees, which is not fair to anyone to have to work in that. So thank you for taking time out for us tanning at the beach to participating in this. Right. Have a great summer. See you the next time.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bye.